All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. And we want to welcome you to our April 2022 Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions. This is hosted by the State Climate Office for Kentucky, which is a division of the Kentucky Climate Center within Western Kentucky University. Today, I guess I should introduce myself. I am Megan Shargorodsky, and I'm the interim director of the Kentucky Climate Center. And today we are going to have Chip Zimmer presenting. He is from the Kentucky Division of Water. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to him.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Megan said, I'm Chip Zimmer of the Kentucky Division of Water. Just welcome you here on a gray, dreary, cloudy April afternoon. Just a couple quick things. Like Megan said, this webinar series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information System and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. And our next webinar coming up will be May 5th. And I can't remember if it's Matt or Megan who's up after me, but one of those two will be running next month's webinar. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to talk about the recent conditions we've been having for March, look at the impacts from the weather from March, and then take a look ahead to what we're expecting for the rest of the spring. And if you look over on the left, up on the top is Lewis County on March 12th, when we had a kind of a freak snowstorm come in, went from 70 something degrees to snowing in a matter of hours. And it came down pretty hard. And down at the bottom is Breathitt County. And I believe that's a controlled burn being used to help kind of stop some of the wildfires that we've been having out in Eastern Kentucky. And we'll talk about more on both these things here in a little bit. So precipitation over the past 7 days, we had a pretty good rain for most of the state yesterday. You can see that streak running from Western Kentucky all the way up through most of Northern Kentucky, Louisville, Lexington, up to Ashland, seeing over an inch of rain, some much needed rain. Down in Southeast Kentucky, lesser amounts. Some places only seeing a half inch or even less than that, which is a place that really has needed the rain. More so than everybody else. If we expand it out to 30 days, you can see really there has not been a lot of rain in the past 30 days outside of what we just got. Lexington area saw an inch and a half of rain or so, and you can see the total for the past 30 days is only 2.4 inches. So for the whole past 30 days, over half of the rain has come from one single event. The exception to that is out in Western Kentucky. You can see there's some 4 or 5 inch totals out there. They've gotten in on some bigger rain events during the month compared to the rest of the state. Expanded out to 60 days, so you can see a lot more warm colors on the map. And it was a much wetter back in February, and that's reflected in this map. You can see 9, 10, 11, 12 inch totals for past 60 days, especially in Western and Central Kentucky. Still up over in Southeast Kentucky, you still see some smaller totals, and also up in Northern Kentucky as well. And once you get out to the 90-day, which includes basically the entire year almost, most of January is included in that. And January and February were very wet months, and you can see that reflected here with warm colors throughout the state, but still seeing lesser amounts still out in southeastern and northern Kentucky compared to central and western Kentucky. So if we look at the percent of normal precipitation, you can see on the 30-day up in the top left how really compared to normal it's been dry through the eastern 2/3 of the state. And that's really changed just in the past couple of days too. When I was looking at Monday, most of that was confined to southeastern Kentucky. So it's really expanded. Even with that rain that we had, the percent of normal has dryness has expanded. Basically, there was a bigger rain at the beginning of the month that got knocked off, as that 30-day moving average moved away from it. So it's definitely, I'm sure a lot of people have noticed it has been a dry March, and that's reflected on that map. And then when you get out to the 60, 90 days, you can see a lot more greens and blues indicating what are the normal conditions. Again, really Southeast Kentucky is the only place where you're still seeing the yellows. 60 days over towards the Lake Cumberland area as well. But we look at March, the state averaged 3.62 inches of precipitation, which is about an inch below normal. It was the 44th driest March on record. That's out of 130, I think, some odd years. So dry, but not significantly dry. However, if you just took the Eastern Climatic Division, it was the 8th driest March based on Mesonet data compared to the record. So it was a very dry and significantly dry month in Eastern Kentucky. Just another map just showing just the March precipitation. You can see again that bullseye down in Southeast Kentucky where it was drier, and also in Northern Kentucky as well. Snowfall. We did see some more snowfall in March. Several places saw several inches of snowfall. So this is the accumulated snowfall for the entire year, percent of normal. And you can see that Kentucky, almost all of Kentucky, is well above average for the for snowfall for the year. And it's looking like we may pick up a tiny bit more tomorrow and Saturday, especially in the northern half of the state. So winter not quite ready to leave us. Also, if you look up on the left side there, Nebraska, South Dakota barely got any snow this year. That's an area where they're used to having snow cover throughout the winter, and they've been in a pretty significant snow drought and regular drought as well. So that's just something on a national scale that's been a big issue. Temperature wise, March was also warm. The state average was 48 degrees. And that preliminarily is tied for the 38th. Oh, sorry, it says January, but it should be March. It's tied for the 38th warmest March on record, dating back to records back to 1885. And you see the daytime temperatures were really warm. Nighttime temperatures were still above normal, but not nearly as much as those daytime temperatures were. But all in all, it was a warm month, but nothing compared to what we saw in 2012, where we were 12. I think it was about 12 degrees above normal for the state. So nowhere near that. Looking at the U.S. Drought Monitor, the past several months, we've had this all the drought out west and also along the eastern coast, and we've kind of been living in the sweet spot, all white. And you see that's actually changed this week as some D0 has moved into eastern Kentucky. We got that area stretching from the DC mid-Atlantic area going into eastern Kentucky, and then if you look at west, there's just so much drought, and that extends down into the deep south and then across into the Carolinas. So we are starting to see that. Hopefully that's not something that's going to stick around, but something we are definitely going to be keeping an eye on. And there we are, just looking at the state. Just over 11% of the state is in D0. Now that is not drought, that is just abnormally dry. Think of it as kind of a drought watch. If things continue staying dry, we could go into drought, but we haven't quite reached there, but it's kind of something we need to keep an eye on. And looking at the change map, you can see there this over the past 4 weeks, you can see the D0 that has popped up in West Virginia and Kentucky. Really, there has been some improvements in the Midwest, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, down into Arkansas and Louisiana. So there has been improvements there, but there's also been degradation over in the Carolinas and Georgia. So that's kind of where this D0 is kind of coming from, that area of drought. So it's something to be kind of watching. And then of course, if you go out west, it's just lots of yellow. There is some green out in Colorado, but they just can't get rid of the drought. And it's just amazing seeing this much drought really any time of year, but especially in the spring, having this much drought in the country is pretty amazing. So this is a throwback to Stu Falster. I like to use these maps, so I'm kind of going to carry on the tradition. I know Matt used one a couple months ago. And what this is, if you're not familiar with this type of graph, on the x-axis is the March precipitation. On the y-axis is the April and May precipitation. And each year is plotted. So any year that you see that's below that yellow line had below normal precipitation in April and May. And to the left of the blue line had below normal precipitation in March. And that red line is March of 2022. So you can see about an inch below normal, but there's still a lot of years off to the left of that were drier. But what I really wanted to key in on is Eastern Kentucky. And you can see that line much farther to the left. Like I said, it was the 8th dry, using Mesonet data, it was the 8th driest March on record. Mesonet data showed an average of 2.17 inches for the month. So well below 2 inches below normal. And if you look at this, what I'm trying to show is, if we have a dry March, does that mean we're going to have a dry April and May? And you can see, if you look at the other 7 years that were drier than this year, you see 4 of them were also dry in April, May, but 3 of them were wetter. And if you look at those years, none of them to me really stick out as, oh my gosh, those were horrible years. But then if you look over just to the right of it, to the red line, you see 1988 sitting there. We all know what happened in 1988. So that did get a start in March. And you can kind of see, looking at just this area right here, just to the right of it, most of those years are that had a dry March, also had a dry April, May. But, we also had a few up here as well. So it's something, I wouldn't say there's a correlation there necessarily, but it's, there is something there. I mean, there is a decent number of years that had a dry March that also had a dry April, May. And the other interesting thing I saw this is, if you notice, most of the years are below that yellow line. And now part of that reason is, or the real reason it is that average for April and May is based on the 1991 through 2020 30-year average. And so we're looking at dates all the way back to 1895. And over the years, our average has gone up because the past 20, 30 years have been very wet. So, and I found it interesting looking at the data, looking at 66, 69, those years were dry. I think 69 was less than 40 inches of rain for the entire year. And when you look at that compared to the years around it, it really didn't stick out as much. But that was as dry as 2007 was. That was also, you're just under 40 inches for this year. And that year really stood out because of how wet the years around it were. So it's interesting that how much over the past 30 years, how much wetter it's gotten in the spring and really all year throughout the Eastern Kentucky and all of Kentucky, how much wetter it's gotten compared to historical. It's pretty amazing. And Stu always talked about how the past 20 years it gets how much wetter we have been on this trend, and eventually it's going to flip and we're going to go dry out. And just hoping this year's not the year. But I did want to highlight the drier years, and I chose less than 40%, 40 inches of precipitation, basically because it's a nice round number. There's nothing super significant about that number. Just try to tease out the drier years. And you can see one thing they have in common, they were all dry Aprils and Mays, but they weren't all necessarily dry Marches. So that there is something there. Just because you have a dry March, or even just because you have a dry March, April, May, there's plenty of years that weren't necessarily drought years in there. So there is hope. Just because we're having a dry March definitely does not mean we're going to have a drought. But It's something that a lot of droughts have in common. You can see over in that bottom left corner, you see 1988, 2007, 1999, 1930, all really bad, nasty droughts in this part of the world. So something we don't want to see, but it's something that we need to keep an eye on and realize that this is something that we may be looking for. But then again, April, May can put down a tremendous amount of rain. So it's something that we may not notice, in a few months. We might be like, oh yeah, it was dry for a month. And, just take an example, 2021, very dry April and May, and ended up being a pretty wet year. So just something to keep an eye on going forward. Looking at soil moisture, the top left, the NLDAS, you can see it's showing that 1 meter soil moisture percentiles are low, especially in eastern and central Kentucky. Now this is from April 2nd, so it's not including the rain we just got, but you can, it is something that was starting to pick up too. However, Grace groundwater was not really picking up on that yet, and that's a little bit more of a long-term thing. The groundwater is not just looking at soil moisture as in all of the groundwater, so it's a little bit more of a long-term indicator than the soil moisture. And on the bottom left, we have the Breathitt County Mesonet soil gauge. And you can see over the past month, you can see the soil moisture starting to drop. Even the 20-inch reading was starting to drop. Now, keep in mind that, the lowest one, the 2-inch soil moisture, was still at 29% soil moisture. In the summer, we'd be really happy with 29% soil moisture. When it dry then is when it's getting down to 15% soil moisture. So, relatively, we still have plenty of soil moisture than, when we're in a drought in the summer. But it's something, when it gets low like that in the spring, when we're supposed to be recharging, it's something we got to look out for, because we don't want to go into the summer already lacking on soil moisture. It ends up being that you can get in trouble a lot quicker. Same thing in Nicholas County. You can see that the one difference is the 20 and 40-inch soil depths really weren't reacting nearly as much as you saw in Breathitt County. And they did come up with this latest rainfall. Breathitt County didn't see nearly as much rain. And so as a result, while the shallower soil moisture areas you did see a reaction to the rainfall, you did not see that in the deeper 20-inch soil moisture. Stream flows, they are low, especially in southeastern Kentucky. This is the 7-day average, and you can see a lot of the deep reds, the much below normal. And you expand that out to the 28-day, and you still see a lot of the below normals. And if you've heard me on here before, I've talked about, this time of year, I take stream flows with a grain of salt, because, any time you go a week without rain, they get low because stream flow normals are so high. However, this is kind of the exception to that, because, we're at 28 days and you're seeing that this has been an extended period of time. And the other thing I noticed when I looked at the live data today, even with the rain that we got yesterday, there's still lots of oranges and reds on there. They did not respond at all to that rain, which is an indicator that, the soil is dry and that, we are hurting for rainfall. It's not just where's the wall between rains. However, again, looking at this is a way of looking at the flows compared to the averages. This is a 2-year time frame, and you can see the average. In the springtime, the averages and average stream flows are a lot higher, and then it dips down as you get into the summer and fall. And you see where we are right now. That's the black line there. And you see that we're in that deep red. That's the 10% of normal, or 10th percentile stream flows. So you see, but if you draw a straight line across to September or so, you see the stream flow we have now. And this is the Cumberland River at Harlan. That would be in the top 10 percentile in September. So again, you go out to the streams right now, there's still plenty of water, and we're not talking about streams being dry, But again, we're at that point where the stream flows start going downhill as we get into summer. So you don't want to be already down in that deep red as we go into summer, because it's just going to continue along that trend. And then it's easier to get into issues as we get into the summer. So hopefully we can get some more rain and get the stream flows back up to around normal as we go into the growing season, as we get into summer. Current flooding, we don't have any. Every place that we see, there says 12 gauges near flood stage, those are all up in Indiana and Illinois. In the state of Kentucky, everything is at or below normal right now. Storm impacts during March. You can see it's a pretty busy map. The two things that are taking up the most space on those maps is the heavy snow event on March 12th. Like I said, that was a day where we had a strong cold front came through. Most of the moisture was on the back side of that. So we went from very warm temperatures to snow in a matter of hours. That was SEC tournament time. I was watching the game, and it was just starting to snow when the game started, and got up at halftime and looked out the window, and all of a sudden there was like 3 inches of snow on the deck. It came down that fast. Places got over a half foot of snow. Well, luckily the ground was still warm, so we really didn't see a lot sticking on roadways and stuff. So it was more of a grassy event, nice and pretty, and melted within a couple of days. The other big event was the very end of March, March 30th, March 31st. We had non-thunderstorm winds coming in as much as 70 miles per hour. Very, very rare situation to have winds that strong not associated with thunderstorms in this region. It did a fair amount of damage. There was a number of power outages, trees down. I know my neighbor's house had roof tiles sitting in their driveway. Just not something we see normally. That's normally something you see of a thunderstorm having winds that high. We also, the other big, and that was the all these big kind of tan yellow squares that you see. Those are all the high wind events. We also had a lot of wildfires out in southeastern Kentucky. In March, over 12,000 acres burned, and in the first 6 days of April, already 6,000 acres have burned. So definitely a busy, very busy spring fire season in southeastern Kentucky. And this is just a map showing those high winds from the March 30th, 31st event. You see the Frankfort Mesonet recorded a 72 mile per hour wind gust. Over in Union County, a 73 mile per hour wind gust. But you can see a lot of readings in the 40s, 50s, 60 mile per hour. So like I said, it was a widespread event with really high winds. Now looking over at the ag impacts, we are very, very early in the growing season, so not a lot of information going on. You can see 1% of corn was planted this week, and 38% of tobacco transplants were seeded, which is about 1% behind last year. So on track for the tobacco transplant seeding. If you look over livestock, pasture, and winter wheat, all good to fair. Definitely you can see probably, especially the pasture, probably starting to see some of that dryness that was impacting. I know Matt had mentioned that he was hearing rumblings from cattle farmers saying that they really could use some rain. So hopefully that rain that we saw helped, and just wait for the next round to help continue getting us out of this little dry stretch. On the bottom, alfalfa weevil time. They begin to come out when the growing degree days hits 190. And as you can see, we've already passed that point in western and southern Kentucky, and we're just getting to that point in central Kentucky. So it's about time to go out and start looking for the weevil larvae, and start scouting fields for them. Other impacts on the back last week, March 27th, 28th, we had a couple nights of pretty cold and hard freezes. So there may have been a little bit of impacts from that. Matt mentioned that some plastic culture strawberries were in bloom, and if they weren't covered, they would have been injured. Here, the other thing going on was winter wheat was in the jointing stage, and it can at that point it can withstand a temperature down to 24 degrees for 2 hours. So we really didn't reach that. So the damage to winter wheat should be minimal, and alfalfa should have been all right as well. And what you're looking at here is just the impacts that happen, what critical temperatures. So down at the bottom left, you see strawberry buds, flowers, and fruits. So merge buds, as long as it doesn't get down to 10 degrees or lower, they're fine. Closed buds, 22 to 27. So as long as they weren't open flowers, they probably were okay. And you can look over on the right. We had no places on the morning of the 27th that was down below 24 degrees, and just a few that did get below that on the night of the morning of the 28th. So so there could be a few of those places like Maysville or Cynthiana. There may have been a little bit of winter wheat damage, but for the most part, most places are going to be okay. And Matt also wanted to wish everybody a happy opening day. He's a Cubs fan, so he had to share this shirt. I'm a Reds fan, so I'm not a fan of that shirt. And I'm also salty because for the first time since I think I was alive, the Reds are not starting opening day at home. So I'm a little salty about that. All right, so looking ahead, precipitation. This is the QPF for the next 7 days. If you are looking at this, you see a lot of rain down in the lower Mississippi Valley, and then extending up into the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes. A lot of that is on day 6 or 7, associated with a front that we're moving in. For the next few days, we are going to see some rain and snow, but it's going to be on the lighter side, closer to 1/10 of an inch. Just kind of like we have today, dreary and damp and cold. Looking at the 6 to 10 day outlook, you can see it's going to be warm here. They're predicting warm temperatures. Once we get out of this weekend, we should see a pretty big warm up into the 70s. As a big ridge moves in, and you see out west, there is a big trough with colder temperatures out west. And in that battleground in between is where the above normal precipitation is anticipated, and that includes us. If you got to the 8 to 14 day, you can see that big trough shifts eastward. So looks like for around Easter time, another shot of cold air potentially for our area. With that axis of above normal precipitation moving towards the East Coast. But that does include Eastern Kentucky there. So pardon me. So something to, keep your fingers crossed that this does come true and we do get some above normal precipitation in Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky over the next couple weeks. Looking at the month of April, the prediction is really above normal, just slightly above normal chances for above normal precipitation in our area, a little higher chances up in the Great Lakes. This is a classical La Nina sign. So it looks like that is what the Climate Prediction Center is banking on. And temperatures, equal chances. Given what we just saw in the past couple ones, it looks like at least the first half of April is going to be a roller coaster, which is pretty normal for around here. So while we might end up with normal temperatures for a month, it's either going to be days below normal or above normal, equaling out. But at least the first half is just going to be typical roller coaster temperatures for Kentucky. We'll see what the second half holds. And looking at April, May, and June, again, showing that really that La Nina signal with a slightly above normal chance, higher precipitation in Kentucky and a little bit higher chances up into the Great Lakes area. Speaking of La Nina, they are now forecasting La Nina to maybe hang around into the summer. Typically, it kind of ends really late spring, so it's kind of sticking around longer. And also over a 40% chance that we could still have La Nina going into next fall. Now, this was already a double dip La Nina, meaning that we had 2 years in a row with La Nina. So if this does hold true, and if we do have another winter and fall with La Nina, that would be 3 in a row, which I can't say it hasn't happened before. I'm not quite up on that, but I do know that if it does, it would be a rare thing to have it 3 years in a row. So, but we'll see. There's still also a 40% chance that we'll just have ENSO neutral as well. So probably going to be one of those two. Not much of a chance of El Nino coming back for next fall. So looking at your stream flows for April, the High River Forecast Center is predicting normal stream flows from much of the state, a couple of the above normal there, one in the Licking River and another one in the Green River Basin, but overall predicting normal stream flows. As for flooding, pretty much all the gauges are at less than 50% chance for long range flood risks. Not surprising considering how dry it's been. Just a couple, looks like 3 orange gauges over on the Ohio River in Western Kentucky is the only ones that have a greater than 50% chance for minor long range flooding. So looking pretty good, at least in terms of flooding for the rest of the spring. Wildfire potential. We are looking good in Kentucky, but you see there is a lot of wildfire chances on the East Coast and in the Midwest. Not something you see a lot of this time of year. So not a good thing for a lot of places to be starting out the already being in significant wildfire potential in the spring. But again, there's a lot of drought in those places, so it's just leading to more wildfires and them kind of spring up when they're not supposed to be. So in summary, again, it was a warm, dry March for the state, especially in Eastern Kentucky, which had one of a top 10 driest March. And we do have D0 abnormally dry conditions currently in parts of Eastern Kentucky. Right now, the outlook is for higher than normal chances for precipitation as we go into the rest of the spring. And those last two got carried. Something didn't have to get changed over, and those are for the previous slide. So I apologize for that. But in general, it looks like we are off to a normal start for the growing season, and really haven't gotten anything for the really haven't started up the growing season yet. So other than just a little bit of corn being planted in tobacco. So far, so good. And that is all that I have. Again, the next webinar is not March 3rd. It is May 6th, I believe. And if you have any questions, feel free to email Megan, Matt, myself, or Bill Caldwell. And again, thank you for the presentation, or thank you again for participating in this presentation. And let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Chip. I just looked it up and it is Thursday, March 5th or May 5th. Goodness. So it is Cinco de Mayo will be our next webinar. And as he said, well, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute or type in the chat box. I see one additional Cubs fan in the audience. So, hopefully you'll be able to enjoy your opening day. All right, looks like you covered everything pretty well, Chip. So, Matt, do you have anything you want to say? I know you're in your classroom, so probably not.
Go Cubs, go.
All right. Well, we will look forward to seeing everybody on May 5th. That I think is going to be my day. So hopefully there won't be more drought to talk about by then. So everybody have a nice day and enjoy your baseball.